on this computer. Hi everyone, welcome to a quick briefing on using the agency head agreement for placement. So I'm going to run through this quite quickly. If you have any questions, please save them till the end. And if you're watching this video and you have questions, please contact me. Don't proceed until you're clear on what to do. Thank you. So I've got a list of instructions here for us all to follow to make things quite easy. This will be saved in SharePoint. All of the agreements, all of the instructions, tracking, everything to do with the legal agreements for placement is saved in the student placement SharePoint folder under legal agreements. I'll show you that in just a moment. So whenever you're using this, I know that some of you have started using the agreements and you've been fantastic with it. I know the agreement's been sent out to many agencies and I thank you for that. We're well on the way to our project of having over 300 agencies sign the agreement. There are old agencies, and I know that you're working on all of the new agencies. It is very important that you understand that no student placement is to commence until this head agreement has been signed. It's that important. So we didn't have one for many years, but our legal team have told us that it's a massive risk for ACAP, and it's very, very important that the agency that we're going to be working with is bound to the college at this high level, so that if anything does go wrong, that initial binding agreement is in place. So it is a very important thing for us all to be aware of. So let me just share my screen with you now so you can see the instructions. So this form will be available in SharePoint. Now when you go into the SharePoint placement unit folder over here, all of you have been invited to the placement unit folder. If you can't access it, please contact me and I'll make sure that I invite you. You'll find here under legal agreements for placement that there are several folders. The first one I want to draw your attention to is this one here. The most important document that's in this folder is the ACAP Placement Head Agreement for all new agencies, master. Now, before somehow there were 2 copies in there, there's not anymore. We've taken them out. There is only 1 copy. Now, whenever you open this folder, there should only be 1 copy because this is the master and none of you are going to be working directly on the master, obviously, or else it wouldn't be the master anymore. So when you open it, it should look like this and it should be clean with nothing entered into the boxes for the agency. So there's where you're entering the agency name, the ABN, the date, and then the information that you need to enter goes here. Again, it's a repeat, I understand, but that's how it is. Now, this document is protected. That means that the only parts of this document that you can complete have been unlocked. So if you go into the document somewhere and you try to change something, like here, for example, nothing happens. Even if you click Edit Document, you'll find that you're unable to edit the content. Now, this is most important. I'll show you what I mean here. That'll be locked when you come back to it. It's very important that you know and that you tell the agencies that the document is locked for a reason. Right? Our lawyers have told us that most of what's in this document can't be negotiated. If we were to negotiate on most of it or any of it, we leave ourselves wide open. Now, most agencies are actually fine with it, and I think you've had that experience. You send the document out, you tell them that's the ACAP agreement, they read it, they sign it, they send it back. It's really not a problem for the vast majority. Every now and then, an agency will say, oh no, we don't agree with this little piece or that little piece, etc. Can you change it? The answer is no, you can't change it. Now, what I recommend that you do is speak with the supervisor or the general manager who you're having this conversation with and just let them know that our legal advisors have said that this is a very general document. It does have provision to protect both ACAP and their agency. So our lawyers have said that if we are to tweak it or change it, then we run the risk of weakening the protection for either ourselves or them. So generally speaking, there won't be any changes. Now, if you have an agency who says, well, we won't be signing it then please say, I'm going to put you through to the senior manager of the placement unit, and I will negotiate with them. I'll work it through with them, and I'll speak to our lawyers before we make any changes. So I'm not saying, never, ever, 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 but I am saying don't be weak about it. Don't just say, oh, sure, don't worry, I'll get it changed. I'll just send it to Dee and she'll get it changed. It's probably not going to be changed. So have a gentle conversation about that to say that it's very general. We can change the details of the placement. That's not a problem, but that doesn't belong in this document. What belongs in this document is the general agreements about how we're going to look after our students, how our students and ACAP are going to look after the agency. It makes sure that the placement agreement is actually between the college and the agency, not the student and the supervisor. That's really important. So there are many reasons, but I'll leave it at that. Any questions about that, please contact me privately and we'll go through it. So you enter the details that can be edited. So on here, for example, in that box there, you enter the details of the agency. On the front page, details of the agency. And that's about it. Then you scroll all the way through to the bottom, and this is where the signature is required. Now, I recommend that you fill in the name, you fill in the title, you fill in the date of the person who you require to sign this agreement. Now, who is that? For the majority of the agencies you're dealing with, they're not part of major corporations and they're not part of New South Wales or Victoria or WA Health, okay? They're usually smaller community-based agencies or private agencies or they might be part of a group of agencies, but they're not a major corporation like Healthscope or Ramsay who have national facilities and hospitals all over the country. So this agreement is for all of those agencies, and the person who needs to sign it is a very senior person. It's definitely not the placement supervisor. If you've got someone who's fairly low down the chain and they're supervising students, so they're actually dealing with placements, with patients and clients, they're not the right person. Please ask that person to take this agreement to the most senior person in the agency. In some cases, that will be a CEO. In other cases, it will be a general manager. In other cases, it shouldn't be a practice manager. It should be the person that the practice manager reports to. So we're looking for the top of the tree. So just like the ACAP signatory is not me, it's George, the top of our tree. So it's very important that you do get to the most senior person you can. Now, sometimes that will cause you delays. I understand that and I appreciate it. However, it's really important. Now, if you've got a placement that's due to start in a couple of weeks, then you are then going to need to work with the supervisor to say to them it's an imperative that they chase the person and get the document signed. You can't do it, but it's important that they do the chasing. Now, you have to do the reminding, so that's very important. But once you say to them, I'm really sorry, but the placement can't start unless we get that document back, so let's work together and see how we can do that as fast as possible. You'll be amazed what they will do because they want the student. So if there's an insurmountable problem, just give me a call and we'll talk it through and we'll find a way around it, okay? All right, back now to the instructions document. So just to read through so it's all very clear for you. What is the head agency contractor agreement? Now, we can use those words interchangeably. Sometimes I'll say the head contract, sometimes I'll say the head agreement. It's the same thing, okay? So use the word head and we're all on the same page. The head contract is a section of section one of the three sections that go together to make up the entire placement agreement. The first section, this one, is the head agreement. The second section is the schedule, and that will be done for each placement, and we have not implemented the schedule yet. So don't worry about the schedule for now. And the third section is the student agreement. We're going to talk more about that at another time. That will be implemented very soon. Now, when those three go together, we have a complete placement agreement, but they can be stored in different places. It's just that if there is a legal challenge or something terrible happens, we've got our complete agreement, and it might be a 3 or 4 place.
I just want to quickly clarify, Dee. So the schedule and registration is currently the registration form in Sonia for counselling anyway.
That's right. So all of the disciplines have their own method for registering a placement at the moment. Please continue with whatever method you currently use. For counselling, that's the registration form in Sonia. For social work, I believe there's a contract that's signed by the supervisor. For psychology, there's definitely a contract that's signed by the supervisor. And for vet, there is an agreement as well. Please just keep going with those. We will get to the schedule in time. Okay. Now, the head agreement is signed once every 5 years. It is the overarching agreement that binds ACAP to the agency, and no placement should commence until the head agreement has been signed and received by the student placement coordinator. Okay, that's the rule. Now, if you need to break the rule, you need to get my approval before you do that, okay? All right, process for new agencies. When a placement has been discussed and agreed to verbally, the head agreement must be sent to the agency supervisor with instructions that this agreement must be signed by the most senior person in the agency or their delegate. Now, obviously, the CEOs, it's like if George isn't here, if he's overseas, then he will delegate someone to be his signatory, probably Raf, so obviously, or their delegate. Before the placement can commence, it is generally not signed by the agency supervisor. So please be clear with them that they don't sign this. Otherwise they will, of course. Make a copy of the master head agreement, which is available on SharePoint here, and save it to the folder, all new contracts sent to agencies. Do not work on the master copy. Make a new copy every time. Okay, so when you're in the SharePoint folder, if I can get to it, you should open the master copy here, and you should immediately save as. And when you save the document as a new copy, so you have to hit edit document first, try to edit it in the browser. Don't download the document. There's no need. You can do everything you need to do in the browser. Okay, now save as. Oh Lord, SharePoint does my head in. I'll have to have a look at this at another time. It looks like you have to edit it in Word in order to save as. Deanna, do you know?
Yes, I think so. Otherwise, when you edit in the browser, it just automatically saves everything you do. Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to SharePoint and start again. So this time you're going to open the head agreement. If it'll open. It's probably got too many copies open now. And edit document in Word.
Edit in Word will also save in SharePoint. So whether you edit in browser or in Word, it's still connected. You have to, if you want to do it separately, you have to download and save, and then you have your own separate file.
But you can save as when you do it in Word.
Yeah. But if you just edit in Word, it's still linked. It will still save in SharePoint unless you download and save, or you save as and then make changes, like save as straight away.
To do right. So once you've edited in Word, go to save as, and now you're in SharePoint here. So you go here to all new contracts sent to agencies. Open that. Now follow the convention here. That's the ACAP naming convention. We don't use it as a rule at the moment, but we're going to. There's instructions about that somewhere else. Follow the naming convention, rename the document here, and save it here. Okay, so I've come into SharePoint several times and found copies of the document sitting around the place. Right, it's really important that we don't do that. So I found extra copies of it here on the main page. We shouldn't find that. The main page should look like this all the time. So please save here into all new contracts sent to agencies. Then send it off to your agency, and immediately go here to the tracking sheet. Now, Deanna, I've made some changes to the tracking sheet. Sorry about that. I'll talk to you about them later. So please open the tracking sheet, and everyone, and I mean everyone, for every single agreement, you must complete the tracking sheet. Now, the reason is here you don't have to complete all of the details, right? That's not important. This one is essential. We need to know whose it is. These are essential. The agency email, etc., that's not, you don't have to fill all that in unless you want to for your own records, but this is absolutely essential. Okay, so note the date that you emailed the contract, and then note the date that you're going to follow up. Okay, so if I would leave it, say, 1 week, then put in the date there. Otherwise, you won't remember. You put in your own diary as well, obviously, too. Now, you may have to follow it up twice, a week later, or it could be a few days later if the placement's very urgent, right? Now, you may call, if you haven't got it back and it's been 2 weeks, it's really time to get into action. So then you call the supervisor, have a talk to them and say, we really can't proceed any further until that contract's done, and make a plan with them for how they're going to get to the general manager or the CEO, how they're going to talk to their EA and make a date by when that agreement will be signed and returned. It's really important that you make this happen. If the agency does request an amendment, record it here, and then if the contract is amended by me and the legal team, record it here. Send the date that you got the contract back. This should say signed agreement. Date that the signed agreement was received by ACAP. The date that you filed it, and I'll show you where to file it in a minute. And this is the most important date of all. All contracts are valid for 5 years. So you need to enter the date that this contract needs to be signed again. Because in 5 years' time, an administrator in the student placement unit is going to use those dates to work out which agreement they need to go back and get re-signed. So it's in yellow for a reason. Don't skip it, please. I will come back to you and ask you to complete it if it's not filled in, because it's going to be a very important administrative tool for us. Okay, any questions about the tracking sheets? It's compulsory, everybody. You really must fill it in because we have to have these dates in 5 years' time. Okay, back to the instructions. Entering all the details on the head agreement. As I've said, the document's protected and our lawyers advise that no changes should be made. If the agency insists and you can't talk them out of it, please put them through to me. Now, this has caused some confusion about which agency gets which agreement. So just to reiterate, there is only one agreement, okay? Now, the complexity comes because some health facilities, some agencies are so big that ACAP has no say. Right? New South Wales health agencies, Vic Health, all of the state-based health facilities, hospitals, clinics, etc., they're all huge and they have their own agreements. They don't care about ACAP's agreement. There's only one agreement they care about, and that's theirs. So we will not get our students in the door of their facilities without signing their agreement. Now, if we have to sign their agreement because they're a major state-based health facility or they are a major corporation, HealthScope, Ramsay Health, these big names in health who have hundreds of facilities, usually all over the country, they have their own agreement and we have to sign their agreement. Now, mostly, we've got all those agreements signed. You don't need to worry too much because if they're a major health corporation, I'll guarantee we've already got the head office agreement signed with them, okay? But if you do find a new one and you're not sure if we've got an agreement, now Victoria is a classic example. We haven't been signing up Vic Health districts very much, so Rosemary's working on getting a lot of those Vic Health districts agreements signed. If you're in WA or the Territory, etc., then there's probably some that we're going to have to sign there as well. But the agency will tell you if they need this major head agreement signed. So that's pretty clear. If it's a state-based health facility, then we have to sign theirs. If it's a major corporation, Healthscope, Ramsay, etc., we have to sign theirs. They don't have to sign ours, okay, because they're too big. They can push us around. They can say no, it's fine. Anything much smaller than that, anything any smaller than that, they do have to sign ours. Now, sometimes you'll find a group like, I can't think of one, Lifeline, I guess, could be, Lifeline Queensland could be a group, or there's many other groups. They still have to sign our agreement. Now, they may send us an agreement, that's okay, we can have a look at it, but in the end, they're going to have to sign ours as well. So for you, when you're dealing with most of your community-based agencies that are not big monoliths, this is the agreement and it must be signed. Any questions, call me about it, okay? So there's no alternative agreement anymore. There's nothing else. There's just this agreement and it has to be signed. All right, so enter the details for the agreement on the tracking sheet as I just showed you. This is essential as the date for renewing will be used by the placement unit in 5 years' time. Once you receive the signed contract back, sign it in, save it in the signed agency contracts folder, and then complete the tracking with the final date. Let's just have a quick look at how that looks. So you started off here, you opened this document and you saved it into here, all new contracts. When you got the contract back and it was signed, you saved it here. At all times, you filled in the tracking sheet with all the details. Now, I know that some of you have sent out agency contracts. We didn't have a tracking sheet then. Please go back now retrospectively and fill in the tracking sheet. It's really important. Okay, questions, please. Nothing at all. Wow, I must have done a really good job. Em, is that all? Oh, sorry.
So what happens when, say, for example, social work have met with an agency and they've sent out the agreement with the schedule and registration for social work only, and then we want to, you know, a couple of months later, we discover they're working with them and we need to add counselling to it. So is that something where we just send them the schedule and registration for counselling, or resend?
So I just want to clarify a couple of things, right? Because what you've just said then is a misunderstanding of the agreements, okay? For ACAP, all disciplines, there is only one head agreement and it's only signed once. There is not a social work head agreement and a counselling head agreement and a psych head agreement. There is only one head agreement and it's only signed once.
Yep.
When you're dealing with any agency, open the list there of signed agency agreements. If the agency is already there, then there's no need to send another head agreement. You definitely will need to do your own schedule for that placement.
Yeah, so that's what I was asking. Do we just send the schedule and registration for counselling?
Well, you won't be sending anything for counselling because it's all done in Sonia through the registration document. It's the same process. That hasn't changed. The only thing that you now have to check, you're still scheduling, well, what do you call that in counselling? Registration, is that the first thing they fill in Sonia?
Yeah.
And what's the second thing?
Confirmation form.
That's it. Just keep going. Registration and confirmation, identical. No change. Doesn't matter what social work's doing. As long as the head agreement has been signed by somebody and is in that folder, you can go ahead with the placement agreement.
Okay, right. So they don't need to see the schedule and registration because the schedule and registration is different. It has different information to Sonia. In the head agreement, it says, according to the schedule and registration, roles and responsibilities outlined in the schedule and registration, but none of that is in Sonia, so they don't need to see that?
Not at the moment. Obviously, there's a gap in the process because we're not in the full process yet. In time, hopefully within about 6 months, We will have the head agreement signed exactly the way we've just set it up now. Then all placements will be confirmed using a scheduled document. So the current way that you do it with your own contract and your own registration and confirmation, all of those processes will go, and there'll be a new process in Sonia called the schedule. And all disciplines will be using their own schedule for their own placement, but it will all be held within Sonia. But we're not up to that yet. So for now, business as usual, except that you also need a head agreement signed. Check if someone else got it signed. Don't get it signed twice. Okay? You still look confused, Christine.
Yeah, because I had said to Kerry, she was sending out an agreement to fax, and I said to her, send them all the schedule and registration so they know the sample one, because there's an extra 1, 2 and 3 as part of the head agreement. And in the head agreement, there's a lot of mention that refers to the schedule and registration. So she had to send them some sort of a schedule. And I said to her, send them all 3 saying, if you take a student from ACAP, these are the 3 types of placements and types of students you could, as part of the head agreement. Because originally she only wanted to send the 1 for social work, and I thought, does that mean then that we only send a second one for counselling when we get to a counselling placement? Because I think the schedule is really important. It has all the things there about the roles and responsibilities of the supervisor, the counselling one-on-one hours, what counselling is. That's where all of that information is. Yeah.
You're right. However, it was causing massive confusion in the agencies because everyone wanted to fill it in. So that's why I took it out, because it just was causing so much confusion. So for now, I understand what you're saying and you're right, but we're just in an interim period where we haven't implemented the schedule yet. So if an agency comes back to you, basically it's really simple. Send them the head agreement. I'd say 80% of agencies will simply sign it and return it, and there won't be any questions. People don't read them as a rule anyway. They just know there has to be this agreement. So send it, get it back, file it, and then business as usual. Do whatever you normally do for any placement, okay? Now, if you have an agency who comes back and says, it keeps referring to the schedule, but I don't have the schedule, send them the schedule. But tell them not to fill it in. It's for information only, okay? I know it's difficult, it's awkward, it's not right, but it's where we're at. We haven't implemented the schedule yet because it's not in Sonia. We haven't got anyone to do the work to put it into Sonia. It's a big project to get the schedule into Sonia, take out the registration and confirmation. It's a big workload. But we can't hold off any longer on the head agreements. We have to get the head agreements going now and operational. If someone says, what is this schedule? I need to see it. Send it to them, but don't let them fill it in. Okay? It's not perfect. It's an interim measure, I understand. But for now, please just do it that way. And before too long, when we do the Sonia shift and change things the way we do things in Sonia, then the schedule will be part of that. All right. Other questions, Christine?
No, not for now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Does anyone else want to talk about that?
There was an email went out yesterday about not sending out contracts because there's an issue with them. Are we allowed to send out contracts or not? Yeah,
just until today. The issue was that there were multiple copies of the agreement floating around with different numbers of pages. So I've now gotten rid of everything and there's only one copy back in SharePoint. Okay. Good. Okay, any other questions? Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry it's not perfect. I'd love it to be perfect, but perfect is a big project and we can't wait any longer. We have to get that head agreement out into the system. In time, everything will align. So within a couple of months, when people want to know what the schedule is, it will be in Sonia and you'll be able to send them to Sonia to say, have a look at it. And then we'll change the agreement to say, refer to Sonia. Okay. Good. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. And please call with any questions and we'll go from there. All right. Lovely. Bye.